Welcome to The Agents Angle, featuring stories, information and insights from the football agents industry around the world, from super agents and agency groups to smaller independent operators. I'm Jonathan Booker.
And I'm Peter Paleologos. This week on The Agents Angle, we have a guest who's considered by many to be one of the current super agents. They share with us their insights on the agent industry, as well as their view on the situation regarding agent regulations and FIFA strategy.
And whilst the prominence of some agents associations seems to grow and develop, we also take a look at a few names who have stepped away from the agents industry or are considering to do so.
All that to come on this episode of The Agents Angle.
I don't know about you, Peter, but the last 6 months have been somewhat strange in the football agency world for me, and I can only think a lot of it is probably to do with the changes in the industry in terms of regulation and licensing. As you know, I pretty much stepped away from what I call frontline agency work some time ago now for various reasons. I still do some consultancy work for agents, agencies, clubs and others, as well as try and help a few players pro bono from time to time. But the strangest thing is that after years of fighting to gain and retain clients, I've never had so many inquiries from people asking me to represent players or assist others in frontline agency work.
Yes, it's similar here. It seems that people are coming from everywhere asking for advice on agent-related matters. Now, you, Jonathan, with your expertise, I'm not surprised you are getting inquiries for assistance or representation. We've got to remember right now, agency is a multi-layered business, and there's not many like yourself, I would say, who's got, besides the agent side, you've got coaching credentials, regulatory knowledge, you're a bit of a troubleshooter, and you've got your mediation credentials. And that's important when people are looking for strategic advice or resolving issues. Even myself, besides being a football agent and doing a lot of football lawyer work, I've actually been approached, say, in the last month regarding some interesting projects and initiatives in the space which relate to agents. I think another common trend I'm noticing right now is that people are looking at new offerings. I want to find a niche or an area of expertise maybe to stand out, and not just in the traditional agency representation business. They're coming up with these ideas and projects, whether online or in the agent space, Jonathan.
But as we know, quite a few people have stepped away from the football agents industry after 2015 with the effective deregulation of agents by FIFA. And there were some really good and professional people, some really good agents there who decided that the change from agents to intermediaries back then made the industry somewhat unviable for them. And whilst some of these people are seemingly coming back into the industry with the license coming back, and many of them able to be granted legacy status, there are also quite a few people in the agency world deciding enough is enough and stepping away for various reasons. This may be because with the advent of what I think we see as a new incarnation or even generation of agent regulations and licensing with FFAR.
I'm not surprised. There are quite a few pull factors as we see. Firstly, we see a lot of new and younger agents enthusiastically enrolling to do the exam. I know quite a few of those. And we see experienced agents, you mentioned legacy agents, who've had enough of the industry. And there's a recent article about a Ukrainian agent quitting football. The article's entitled Former Agent of Bushan, Superagent, Kacharidi, and Zelesnov Quit Football. And according to this source, the reason for the decision by an agent by the name of Pirozenko, and the reason for the decision is his disappointment in the profession. Obviously, the war's had an impact in Ukraine, a very sad situation, but Mr. Pirozenko has completely withdrawn from the agency business. He's the founder of 16 Football Agency, and he's had a cooperation agreement with an Italian agency called GG11. It's very minimal in terms of what the article says, but basically he's leaving the agency, even though he's got a lot of good players. We don't know the reason behind it. It hasn't been elaborated that much in the article, but we can speculate. And I think it could be maybe how players are, how they're acting. Maybe it could be other partners not delivering on deals. It could be the situation in Ukraine or how clubs are operating, or maybe he's found another opportunity in another business. We do know in agency you need a lot of energy. It's a very exhausting business, and patience for a lot of us can run thin. And of course, there's a lot more competition now because a lot more licensed agents going to grow at every exam period. So there's going to be churn in the agent space.
As you said, we don't have that much information on the story, but in Ukrainian football and football in that region, he was reportedly seen as a prominent agency figure. Plus, again, as you rightly said, there's so much going on for anyone with a connection to Ukraine at the moment with the war. But it is interesting that his, quote, disappointment in the profession of football agency is even mentioned in the same article as the war itself. And as far as I'm aware, Ukrainian football is amazingly still going on, despite the dreadful situation affecting the country and the people there. We can only speculate as to what that disappointment is without actually talking to Ivan himself. Could it be FFAR and the impact that has had on his work as an agent? Could it be that he has just grown tired of the ways of the industry and the way people act? Could it be the effect of the player status and transfer variations that FIFA brought in because of the war in Ukraine and allowing players to move? Or could it be a culmination of many factors, as I think it is a difficult industry to step away from for many, despite all the frustrations that come with it?
Yes, it is a very difficult industry to leave, especially if you've got passion and you're really interested in the game and helping people. It's very hard to walk away. But here we go. People do, or people switch roles. And there's another recent article in terms of a prominent agent switching to become a sporting director. And this is an agent by the name of Sky Andrews, who's considering a big switch. And this was published in the Mirror. We'll have the link in our show notes. But Sky Andrews is considering switching from being a football agent to becoming a sporting director. I believe he did the deal for Sol Campbell from Tottenham to Arsenal, that bitter rival deal on a Bosman free. So that was interesting. But he's seriously considering switching sides and taking a job with the club. This is based on the fact that he believes that he's got a huge advantage knowing the inner workings of transfers and contract negotiations and how to structure deals. I think many capable agents can easily move across to the sporting or football director role. I think more so than ex-players who maybe haven't established the commercial acumen, where a lot of agents have got commercial acumen. I think it'll be a trend that will keep happening as many agents are well-rounded and have the ability, the insights, the negotiation strategy, and can successfully transition to the role. Now, when I say agents, we may not see the top agents transitioning to clubs. I think it's more agents that have been around, done a lot of good deals, and now want something, a strategy for a club, and they're close to clubs anyway. So this is an interesting move by Sky Andrew.
I'm going to say it, and I think a lot of people may well be thinking it. This is The Mirror. The writer is John Cross, very good football journalist, in my opinion, as I've said in the past, and the agent in question is Sky Andrew. So that is a pattern we've seen before. But the role of sporting director is one of those that is still a bit unclear, as I see it, in football, as it varies between clubs, even countries, in terms of the sporting director's role, remit, and the power they're granted. Some are very good, in my experience. Some are dreadful. Some have power, whilst others are effectively a front for somebody else within the club. Some are relatively qualified for the role through experience, whilst others have obtained the position through, shall we say, nepotism and an element of good luck in being promoted internally from something like a scouting position, let's say. But I have said for quite some time now that, in my opinion, the best people for what I perceive to be the role of a sporting director, if it's a role and responsibilities that are akin to the US sports general manager and not so much a technical director or a director of football, are actually agents who have ethical standards to maintain their duty of care to the club and the ownership. Those who don't have those same values and ethical standards, dare I say, need not apply for such roles. But the knowledge, experience, and arguably the contacts that some agents may have are more applicable to such a position than most. As we mentioned earlier, people have tried to escape the football agency world, and this could well be Sky Andrew getting bored or somewhat infuriated with the industry and all the underhand games, as well as the uncertainty with the regulations as it currently stands. So is Sky merely putting himself in the shop window now? And if he is, all power to him and best of luck to him. I'm sure there are many clubs that could benefit from having him in the house working for them. But that said, we have seen, probably more so at lower levels of football, people flip-flop back and forth from being an agent to having a club role, whether it be sporting director or something similar in recruitment or as a consultant to the club. And that is something for me, I think is dangerous in terms of conflicts of interest and duty of care. And it should be addressed by clubs, leagues, and the football authorities.
Jonathan, I'm going to slightly disagree with you. In terms of agents moving to sporting directors, I think we forget sometimes, Jonathan, that a lot of agents are club agents, club intermediaries, club brokers. They do know the inner workings of clubs, what the budgets are in order to chase players, what players should be pursued for the style of game or the way the club culture, the scouting arrangements, the hierarchy in the club, who says yes to signings. It's not always the coach. I can see why someone like Sky will be tempted by the role, especially it could be a club that has a special project to take the club to Europe, a European competition or a bigger level. Those opportunities is always a great project. And I think for someone like Sky or someone who's done a lot of good agency work, knows how to structure deals, they can influence club direction and strategy at the higher end. And that's maybe what the challenge is seeking here, Jonathan.
I think one of the reasons why we haven't seen any prominent agents switch to being sporting directors in the past, as you rightly say, is that firstly, so much hard work goes into being a prominent agent. It is hard to give up, and you can understand that. But also, to be blunt, for many agents, it isn't lucrative enough to be a sporting director, and in some cases, effectively take a pay cut. Then again, that could all be about to change as we see the value of sporting directors to clubs now being demonstrated quite publicly. What is it? Newcastle United are rumoured to be quoting Manchester United to release Dan Ashworth from gardening leave. Something between, if rumours are to be believed, 15 million to 20 million pounds. And I think we have one more story before we come to our guest interview, which we recorded just over a week ago now, at the time this episode goes live. And when we were chatting to our guests, they chatted to us a little about this incredibly prominent figure from the agents world, who they know very well. And this may actually be some news that some sporting directors may be relieved to hear, as no doubt a challenging opponent from the agency world, if not a nemesis in negotiations for many, is stepping away from their agent's role.
Okay, probably the biggest story of the week in the agency world is superagent Jonathan Barnett retiring after brokering huge Gareth Bale and Jack Grealish deals. That was the title of the article from the Mirror again. But basically, it's Jonathan Barnett announcing his retirement. And Jonathan Barnett, I just want to go a little bit of a history here. He's part of the Stella Group. He established his business in 1994 with David Manasai. They were named by Forbes as the most valuable football agents in the world at a time when they were sold to Hollywood talent agency ICM Partners in 2020. Barnett was previously proclaimed the world #1 football agent based on commissions. Obviously, the Bale move to Real Madrid from Spurs, huge amount of money, I think £85 million plus. But now the veteran deal maker, as is called in this article, has decided to call it a day for various reasons. Now, Barnett recently, he came out very strongly on the Ivan Toney situation about the racist abuse online. They took a very principled position that we need to get rid of this recurring problem across all social media platforms in terms of racial or distressing incidents of discrimination, what happened to Ivan Toney. Now, in terms of players, we mentioned Jack Grealish, Gareth Bale, Jordan Pickford, but generally his, I would say, agency manages about 700 to 800 players, which is a phenomenal number. And I think the reason why, and we've seen a lot of American move in to buy Premier League teams and other teams in Europe, but they've also moved in to buy agencies. And ICM had no sports division as Hollywood agency. So in terms of sport in Europe, football, #1, it made sense for them. Now, just some anecdotes about Jonathan. His mantra was, until the agents came into the industry, the football industry, they were the ones that actually helped players avoid the exploitment a lot of clubs were undertaking. So basically, agents got a lot of players improvement in wages and conditions and more focus on well-being. And I also note that at one stage, I believe when it was Stella, he opened or expanded in Brazil his agency, and I think his son, Joshua Barnett, did some of his agent apprenticeship there. Now, the reason I mention the word apprenticeship is because Jonathan Barnett was big on proper apprenticeship for people who wanted to become agents. Personally, I'm a big supporter in the apprenticeship model and agree with Barnett on this. And I think that has not been considered in this whole regulation that we do need a mentoring. We need some sort of apprenticeship in this business. Now, Jonathan, you dealt with Jonathan Barnett directly. And I know that you're Jonathan and Jonathan Barnett's a Jonathan, but you dealt with him in meetings, especially in English Agents Association, AFA.
Yeah, we're both Jonathans, we're both JBs, and his bank balance and his success is far, far greater than mine. But I've had the privilege of sitting on several meetings and board meetings with Jonathan Barnett whilst at the AFA, the Association of Football Agents in England. Yes, he can be very blunt. He can at times be quite abrasive. But with all of that, you also knew where you stood. It was straight to the point. And also, in my experience, he always treated you with respect if you treated him with respect, which for some in the industry, respect is something in short supply, especially when they get a little bit of success and they get a bit ahead of themselves. Is he going to be missed? Yes, definitely he's going to be missed. Some may well be glad to see the back of him for business reasons. Others will be sad to see him go because he arguably helped move the industry forward, as you said. And at times he fought for agent rights against football authorities such as FIFA. Do I think he'll step away from the industry completely? Maybe, maybe not. He's invested so much time, money, and effort in building Stella up and really becoming the successful agent he is that he probably can't resist being involved in some way, despite the window cleaning business keeping him quite busy. And one of those projects that may keep Jonathan Barnett involved in the football agent world is TFF, the Football Forum, one of the prominent global football agents associations. And Jonathan was one of the founding members of TFF, served as one of its presidents, as does our guest today. So with that, we're very privileged today on the Agents Angle as our guest is one of the most prominent and recognisable names in the football agents industry, if not the football industry as a whole. In addition to 25 years working in the football industry, they have a background in international law, which has included 10 years teaching international public and private law to over 5,000 students, as well as writing and contributing to many articles on international contracts and arbitration. Working with a plethora of some of the highest profile names in the world of football, including the goal machine that is Erling Haaland and the increasingly evergreen Henrik Mkhitaryan. They have established themselves as a key participant and important voice in the agency world and referred to by many as one of the super agents. And in an industry where trust is probably amongst the most valuable, if not one of the rarest of commodities, they were trusted to be the only business partner of the indomitable Mino Raiola, who we sadly lost approximately 2 years ago now. And to top all of this off, they're not only fluent in 6 languages, but also find the time to fulfill the roles of vice president and co-founder of TFF, the Football Forum, and are also honorary president of the Italian Football Agents Association. So, as if everyone listening hasn't worked it out already, it gives us great pleasure to introduce the one and only Rafaela Pimenta to the show. Rafaela, welcome to the Agents Angle.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your words. Very kind.
Rafaela, although you joined us to largely talk about TFF, the Football Forum, I think it would be remiss of us not to recognise, as I said in the introduction, that you are one of the most well-known names in the football agent world and arguably the first woman to be acknowledged as a super agent by some. So to start off, can I ask you about that term super agent? Some people like it, some people don't. How do you feel about the term?
I like it a lot because it makes me think of very special people. When they started using this term, they were referring a handful of people that are really, really close to my heart. And of course, the closest one of all, that is Mino. I used to call him super agent when he was down and to bring him up. And I would go like, hey, super agent, what's going on? And this would become like a joke. So these are people that I really, really love. And it's amazing for me when I can say, hi, super agent, how are you? And when it concerns eventually, if you're mentioning me, that's not how I perceive myself. I think superagent is a compliment. And I have a habit of a self-assessment, self-criticism, but not self-compliment. So it doesn't really ring a bell in this angle.
Rafaela, can you briefly tell us about your journey in the football agency world? You are a lawyer by profession. What inspired you to pursue a career in football?
Well, actually, I used to be, and that's a few years ago, as you just mentioned. It seems like yesterday, but I used to be very academic, and teaching has always been a really, really big part of my passion. And that was for me, talking about football started as a way to bring students to class. Because the subject that I used to teach, that is international law, doesn't automatically interest every law student because it's really a niche. And many of them would not come to class. Civil law, criminal law is much more popular in this universe of students for law. And I thought it would be interesting if they would come because there was always something to learn, even if this would not be your field of preference. And then I was like, okay, what can I add to this subject that would make this a bit more colorful? Because the law of the sea or maybe law of space is not so interesting to everybody. But when you say, I'm going to talk about football and FIFA and international transfers, I thought I had a good pitch in there. And it's funny because one day, it's one of the first stories I had with Mino. I ended up in Argentina, of nowhere. When I got back from Argentina, because it's really a quick flight from Brazil and back and forth, I went back directly to teach. And I got to class with a Boca Juniors envelope because I was just coming directly to class. And then everybody went, Boca Juniors, why did you go there? And what's going on? And I was like, okay, there I have it. And that's what I should be talking about, for them to come. And then so I did. And at that time, there was no field of sports law like there is today. So everybody was curious, what is she doing? What is she saying? And it was a matter of time until classes were full. And out of this followed also students and clients and football players. And that's how I ended up here.
Yes, it's interesting that now sports law has also become football law. A lot of people use the term football law, so it's really progressed. From your career in football agency business, what would be the most memorable or rewarding achievement?
I would say the most special moments are, and it's funny because make a step backwards from your question, yeah? When you start working with football, of course, where I stand, I'm not on the pitch. I don't have the football emotion of scoring a goal. But I always say my game is the game outside the pitch. So my feeling of scoring a goal is something different than the real goal, but it's the achievement of seeing a player land his first contract or his transfer or his first dream, or when I meet a boy that is 14 years old and that lives in a favela, the slums in Brazil, and sleeps on the floor. And he says, one day I want to make it. And it is so far at that moment. And then he puts his boots and he goes on the field. These are very, very special moments. But as you grow into it, the passion for the game grows so hard on you that football achievements, the trophies, the championships, the World Cup, they grow on you. I would say, I cannot say as much as in a football player because I'm not a football player. They grow on you in a way that I have to tell you that when Paul won the World Cup, when Erling won the Champions League last year, even what for some people would be smaller, but at that phase of the career is huge, like an under 15 championship, or like yesterday, like a women player of us, that is Misa, she won Nations League. This is not a smaller achievement. They are all as big as. And the moment this happens, especially if you're at the stadium, I have to say these are for sure some of the best moments of my life. Because you feel so strong about what's going on that it's one of those moments I say that time stops. It's like the noise, the smells, the vibe, the wind of the stadium is something so special. And when there is an achievement attached to it, these are very, very unforgettable moments.
Yeah, quite often hits you by surprise, doesn't it? When you
Yes.
got that tie with someone.
It does, and it's interesting because I remember at the finals of the Euros in France. You guys will remember it was, of course, France and Portugal. It went to overtime and it went to penalties, and it was very intense. And from my point of view, we had three players on the pitch, and it was so intense. And you were like, oh, one more penalty and this and that. So even when they lost, it hits you in such a special way. So the football achievements are really special. But above all, the collective ones, they're so special.
And those are the rewards in a very difficult industry. And on that industry, how would you describe the football agents world today?
It changed a lot. In these years that I'm here, I've seen this go from the one-man show of my dear superagents to a group activity. Of course, it's understandable when an agency has a face, and some people maybe will be more noisy than others. But what used to be like Mino and I with an agenda traveling up and down is not enough anymore. It takes a village today. It takes a village because the footballer went from a footballer to a 360 degrees athlete. And that's a whole other animal in itself, in the sense that you need to deal with this adventure and life story in a different way. Because when I started this job, it was required much less of us. You would have more time to see games, for example, because you had less things to do off the pitch. So it would be expected from an agent to be there in transfer window. Transfer window was really transfer windows. You have the iconic calcio mercato that used to happen in Italy, where people would go there and make deals. Let's go to calcio mercato in Italy and get 2, 3 deals done. No deal gets done in calcio mercato anymore. What the hell? Of course, you have to build it, and the director needs to talk to you and needs to go back and talk to the fund and then talk to the other director, and you need to talk to tax lawyers, and you need to talk to 1,000 people. Nobody can do this in half a day anymore. Not possible anymore. Today, you have to read, you have to exchange a lot of stuff. And this only when you think of the transfer part. When you think of the rest, you would see a football player go to train in the morning and then go home. If he would be injured, maybe he would do something extra, but you would not see 30 years ago a player that would go home and have a post-game treatment, use the machine, have a chef, and then have a few meetings about brand building, sponsor opportunities. And today you do. And because of all this multiplication of complexity, knowledge, technology, expectations, the agency has changed as well. And I think today the agents that claim to work alone will lack on something, because there will be no agent that has all levels of expertise that are required to add something to a career.
Rafaela, you just mentioned expertise. You're an agent as well as a lawyer. I can resonate with that because I'm also an agent and a lawyer as well. Considering you come from a legal tradition, do you approach player negotiations a little different than, say, some agencies or agents, considering you've also got the legal perspective?
Absolutely, yes, I think so. Of course, I am not able to have the non-lawyer perspective because it's in me. But I would see how so many times the way Mino was thinking or addressing something was different from me. I could understand where Mino was coming from, could be done. But I also understood the limits. And sometimes when you're not a lawyer, you don't know exactly some limits to your creativity. And we spent 30 years fighting in a way, in funny ways. But of course, I say it in a positive, funny way. He was like, you cannot do this. But I want to, but you cannot. But I will. No, you won't. No, I will. No. If you do this, I will throw this book on you. Or if you do this, I don't talk to you. Or please stop it and I hate you. It would go from any levels. But it's because, of course, I ended up many times being much more boring than Mino's ideas. But not because Mino was wrong, but because Mino, by not having the background, would be allowed by his own brain to be more creative than me. So I think, yes, things are addressed differently. What cannot happen, I think, And I'm always very concerned when I see sometimes the perception or maybe even the manipulated perception that agents should be lawyers. It's a different job. It's different training, different formation, different mindset. So what also can happen is that if you're too much of a lawyer, you're too square. And then your imagination goes away. Your boundaries get, okay, that's the law. I cannot go beyond that. You can never go beyond the law, but you should ever be able to know the law so well that you can say, okay, that's the law. Maybe I can create something new based on the law. So I think it can be positive to be a lawyer as well in this industry, as long as it doesn't stop you doing things in a new and different way. Because football is always in evolution and law will always evolve slower than football. So we need to be up to speed and we need to be creative.
Right now, people are saying that the transfer market is changing, especially since the pandemic. What are you seeing in terms of recent trends in the transfer market, say the last 2 years? Are there more loans of players, more focus on younger players with really upside on sell-ons? Or is it really just the same? The top 40, 50 clubs are making the big deals. Have you noticed any trend that's a bit different, say, to 3, 4 years ago?
Yeah, what I find interesting is that since COVID, football industry discovered something very interesting, and it's called video call. To go to a meeting and say, oh, nice, okay, so we talk again in a month, because nobody would trust the video. Bit more trust that we can talk on video, and that for me is a big relief because it multiplies your time. But I think there is no difference in what clubs target. Clubs will always target the good players. Clubs always want the super young ones, but also the ones that are ready for the pitch. And some clubs will have a profile where they can only afford the younger ones, and others will have a profile where they have no space for them. I don't see so much of a change in this, but what I think is there's much more planning, and planning is good because planning, at least the way I'm built, planning helps you anticipate the game. And when you anticipate the game in the general sense, you can work better.
Now, I'm going to refer very briefly to an article in The Athletic on the 17th of June 2022, where a few words from a Premier League recruitment lead said that Rafaela Pimenta is the most important football person nobody knows about, while another source in the agent will describe you as the most powerful woman in football now. Considering, and I want to focus a little bit now to the FIFA agents regulations and FIFA's interest all of a sudden to come back into the regulatory environment, I suppose, a more stricter way, and also the litigation that's been on foot between agents, FIFA, etc. What would you say to many agents listening on this podcast about the future of the agent business going forward, considering all the recent developments?
Well, my position about the regulation is very black and white. I am not in favor of anything that is against the law. That's one. And I think now, a few months into this reality, because there was the expectation of this reality, and you don't really know what's going to happen until it's really issued. And I think ever since the regulations were issued, we have seen court reactions, we have seen the suspension of the regulations itself, and then eventually the review. Will they be canceled? Will they be reviewed? Why did we have to wait that judges would say this is wrong to then decide to review it? Then you didn't know this was wrong. If you didn't know this was wrong, really you need to change everybody that wrote it because you didn't want to listen. But apart from that, what is the future going forward? First of all, we'll have to understand what's going to happen with regards to, let's call it the suspended regulations at this stage. But I think in any case, this is an always evolving universe, the ones for agents. Nobody questions or nobody, I mean myself, I don't mean to talk for everybody, but I wouldn't question the fact that regulation and law gives order. That's why I went to law school, right? So I'm a believer in law and order in the technical sense, but I'm a believer in real law, not in what this thing is. And the reason I call it this thing is because, first of all, for something to be a regulation or a law, it needs legitimacy. And legitimacy means that the people that are subject to it need to accept that the people that are issuing it have the authority to do so. And then, first of all, who's the authority to do that? And I think that the right authority to issue regulations for agents are agents themselves. And of course, there will always be bigger laws above us, telling us what we can do, what we cannot do. And we will need to create our own ecosystem subject to what is the law above us. But the law above us, we need to remember it's called state law. This is a law. State law is what we need to respect. State law, because these are the real regulators. With all respect, I don't think FIFA has the authority to issue laws and regulations to a group of people that are market operators and they had to accept FIFA by way of imposition. We don't have a choice. We don't have the choice to not accept it, otherwise we cannot work. But then this is called a cartel. And this is also something to be questioned. So I don't want to be too technical here because it's really boring, but I think the future is regulation, yes, but I think the future is self-regulation. But then you do laws that is only good for you. No, because again, we're not free to regulate as we want. We need to regulate based on the law, but the real law. And we have no problem, in my opinion, of having this discussion with FIFA, with UEFA, with whoever wants to have this discussion and join forces and do this together, because none of us have the power of the state. So none of us can say to the other what to do. I cannot tell my neighbor what to do. I can cooperate with my neighbor and say, let's live in peace so this building works out well. That would make sense.
And the challenges from that and those changes and the uncertainty, it's affecting arguably everybody involved in the football agents industry, not just agents at the moment, everybody, whether it be clubs, players, whatever. And it's quite obvious over the last couple of years that a large proportion of the new FFAR, the FIFA Football Agent Regulations, as well as its implementation, have added to that confusion, which leads us nicely onto the topic of TFF. The Football Forum, formerly the Football Agents Forum, if I'm not mistaken. Can you just give us a brief overview of what TFF and its primary mission and purpose are?
I think as agents, we work so much, so many crazy hours that you get lost in your own job sometimes. You just get lost. And I'm not saying other people don't. I'm just telling from my own experience. And of course, there are other jobs that are as engaging or more engaging. But I'm telling from my small universe of how my job works. My job, we work very, very many long hours. Yesterday, I worked 19 hours after traveling for 13. And it's okay. It's a choice and it's amazing. The fact is, you get caught in it. And sometimes you don't stop to think at your group of people, your colleagues, the agents universe. And at one point, a few years ago, we said, hold on. Let's stop and think of the collective of our profession, because otherwise we will have a problem. There is these regulations that are coming. So we got together to say what's going on. But it's funny because when we got together, we also got to know each other because we had been working so hard that we never met. And you would read about each other, you would know about each other, but you would not be having coffee with each other because you don't even have coffee with your family many times. Yeah, and then we said, let's meet. And when we met, and actually the first meeting of the TFF was held in Monaco. And we booked a room and invited them to come. They were nice enough to come, and probably they were curious, like, okay, what does this woman want? And that's how the TFF was born. And we said, what is it that we could do that will leave a mark or mean something, in an industry that has so much to give, that, and I mean of my small niche, the agents industry, there's so much we can do. There's so much you can do that can be interesting for the good of football. And football is such a strong voice for social changes. And maybe we can add a little drop of a collaboration or leave something behind, after you're done. And then we said, okay, let's create an association. And what can this association do? And the main mission, I would say, of this association, as it is conceived, is to bring agents together, give them a space to talk, give them a space to be heard, and then see, after listening, what are the subjects? What is it that is important for agents that needs to be developed? And what can we contribute in this development? Of course, at the same time, there is and there was the potential challenge of the new regulations. And this becomes a point of an agenda. That is, we need to address this. We need to talk about it. We need to hear about it. And we need to make people aware of what's going on, which in our view is something that needed to be addressed in a very strong way. But that's not the mission of the association. The mission of the association is to be a space for agents of any size to talk, be heard, and then as an association, address whatever are the matters in the industry. And also we have, of course, many of us in the association have this academic vein, as much as I do. And our biggest dream is also to create an education, preparation, a mentoring space for future generations. So much that we've been doing roadshows, we've been doing conferences and lectures. And my biggest ambition is really that this becomes a school for agents. That's my personal one. That's not the mission of the whole association. But I think if we could have a real consistent and continued educating space in the association, that could be useful for the younger generations.
In terms of TFF, if I can use the acronym, having a look at the profile, have a look at the website, there are obviously some big agents, Mr. Mendez, Mr. Whitman, Mr. Barnett, so yourself, and rest in peace, obviously Mr. Riola was also a member, so very prominent people. In terms of our listeners, and there's a lot of agent listeners, smaller agents, medium agents, agents who could be training or running for bigger agencies, just in terms of members of TFF, to become a member, are there certain benefits that agents would receive in joining TFF as an agent organization?
Well, first of all, we are the only agents association that has a fixed staff. So what happens is we operate 24/24. Of course, we let them sleep, but we operate as much as we can. But we're always there. And that's very interesting because that makes it so that you can always reach the association. And these people are always available. First of all, as I said, the listening part. You have a question, you don't know who to look for, what to do. Doesn't mean we'll have all the answers. It means we'll do as much as we can to direct you, at least. I think also that when we founded it with the, let's call it the super agents, like you guys are using this expression. And we founded it with the super agents. And my super dear Roger and then George and everybody. And we did this to have an impact. We did this to have an impact so that it would be loud because of the characters founding it. But the idea was to really let people understand that this is not a gentleman's club, already because I'm in it, so this would never be a gentleman's club. But this is not a small club where this 5-6 people got together to talk. On the contrary, these people got together because they are accomplished in their profession, they are accomplished in what they do, and they want to do more. And what they want to do more is to our demographic, to this universe of what we do. Let's share knowledge, let's be open, and let's see how we can be stronger together. So I would say, what is the benefit for joining TFF? I would say the benefit in itself is that you're part of something that is bigger than all of us, because the collective is always bigger than the individual. Then, of course, you'll always be invited to our events. You'll always have access to everything that is available to all of us. But I would say that when you join an association, in my view, you don't do this for individual benefit. You do this because you believe, and you should also be part of doing something for the collective, even if it's only by associating, by making the association stronger. So that would be mission number 1 of associating with any of them, but also with TFF. And then number 2, we hope to be giving our associates benefits every time more and more. So we're constantly trying to get attractive deals. So then our associates will have easier or cheaper access to insurance policies, to the transfer market of the situation, to whatever other things that we're about to launch very soon, or even to our teaching courses. You have privileged access to it. And that is a bonus, in my opinion, because again, the reason to join would be, I believe there is a need of a bigger representation in the agents universe.
We've seen litigation, and as you mentioned earlier, parts of the FFAR have been suspended and may not come on board. because of state law or could be even European law as we go forward. In terms of achieving your organization's objectives, what do you see as the future challenges in achieving what TFF wants to do going forward?
The TFF, of course, is funded by the associates. People are always very sensitive when they talk about money. I'm not. So the TFF, to have people working all the time and to be able to pick up the phone for you associate, somebody's paying the salary, and that's the associates. So you say to me, are there special benefits? Yes, you have an association that is working for you. This association that is working for you today is having to dedicate its funding to lawsuits that are going on and that are winning. They're financed by us. You have to pay the lawyers, you have to pay the experts, you have to, I mean, that's life, right? You want something done, you need to pay. And I find this a real pity. I find it a pity that our money, the association's money, of course, members pay different fees, and you can always associate also without paying any fees. You can be an associate of TFF and still you will get the benefits of the lawsuits, because the lawsuits, when they will either cause the review of the regulations or the suspension, this will benefit you. And it's a big pity, because if we could have discussions and sensible discussions with the organizations that are wanting to regulate in a way that we would not need to go to court, one of the benefits when I think of TFF would be that the funding that today is directed to litigation could be used for something else. And instead of delaying my dreams of a agents university, this could be used to build it. But today it's used to litigate. So I would say, in a way, we're using the funding wisely because that's how we have to use it. But in another way, it's such a pity that that's where it's going. And I think if we would be able to get over this moment of this stupid, annoying, and very upsetting need to fight, because we're not here to fight. We're here to unite. We're here to discuss. I'm not saying the agents universe is perfect, because it's not. And as with everything, it needs improvement. But if we could find development and improvement through dialogue instead of through litigation, we could be building more for everybody.
Rafaela, that makes perfect sense, because I think one of our frustrations, and I'm going to speak for Peter, so I apologize, Peter, on this one, and I think it's the frustration shared by so many, is that building those meaningful connections, and even where there are unlikely allies amongst the agents community, there needs to be some form of meaningful connection and partnership between the various football stakeholders, and that includes agents. Personally, for me, I think at times FIFA have employed almost a divide and conquer strategy when it comes to the agents and the various agents groups and associations, dare I say, factions. And reflecting and looking back over the last 5 or 6 years, it appears that that's worked at times. Do you think that's an accurate observation? And what do you think can be done to bring most of the agent fraternity together as one?
I agree with you. And I think divide and conquer is a very good way to define it. And that is, as I said to you, I am very much a fan of self-criticism. I think also the agents were not trying to be united a few years ago. They were just either too busy or not thinking of it or not interested. And I think today it is being understood that when we were not together, that's when people tried to actually, in a way, run over us. Yeah. I remember when Mino was suspended, and that suspension of Mino, I will not take time here talking about it, but the suspension of Mino was, I think, one of the most absurd things that I ever saw as a lawyer. And of course, as soon as we appealed, it was reversed. It was the time to appeal and get it reversed. And when it was reversed, one of the people in the legal team that was happy about it tweeted something about this victory. He got a call from an authority. He got a call and said, if you don't put it down, you'll never work with us anymore. Yeah. So even when somebody tried to have a voice that was different, there was some, from what I am told, there was this sort of, let's call it intimidation. Because there is, I think, an interest of fitting public opinion with a certain view of what is this job. Again, I say, nobody's perfect. Nobody does it perfectly. There's much to improve, but there is in my opinion, a big level of exaggeration towards public opinion and enhancement of a negative profile of somebody that is there to do its job. And if somebody that is the agent, that if this person that is the agent, this figure was so unwanted, as some people want to make it sound, nobody would choose them. The players would not come. And that's it. Because when you don't need something or you don't want something, you just don't use it. If I don't like asparagus and there's other things to eat, I would just eat something else. Nobody needs to eat asparagus. Nobody needs to work with you. People maybe will say, I don't need an agent. I'll go without, as some people do. So I think this witch hunting has gone too far. And that went beyond honest criticism to, okay, let's make these people look so bad that we take away all their sense of value and empowerment. And I think that is too much.
Absolutely. And I think those who listen to the podcast can hear my frustrations over many episodes with FIFA and some of the things and some of the approaches they take. But just in recent weeks, some seem to think there's been a shift from FIFA in their approach to FFAR. There was reportedly a meeting earlier this week, if not just a couple of days ago when we're recording, where FIFA officials presented at an agent event. Do you think this is a sign of FIFA softening their stance over FFAR? Or do you think it's just going to carry on until we reach the ECJ decision?
I'll tell you two things. At one point, it became, let's say, so questionable to be an agent that whenever Mino and I would do something, Mino would always say, she's the lawyer, but she's a lawyer. Like, I'm just an agent, but she's a lawyer. Why was he doing this? Because it became such a thing that, okay, he's an agent, he's a crook. And that's, I think, when lawyers started to find so much space in this universe. Okay, nobody trusts agents, they would trust lawyers. Why? A lawyer is more honest than an agent? Who says so? Who says a lawyer will have more ethical standards than an agent? And who says an agent doesn't have ethical standards only because he didn't go to law school? So I think all this is a consequence of public opinion manipulation. Because I think a person can be an agent and have very high ethical standards, morals, commitment, knowledge. Because you're a lawyer, you have more knowledge than an agent in terms of on the pitch needs of a player. So that is one. And to answer to your question, I think we can read it many ways. What's going on? First of all, when I heard there would be a FIFA representative in this event you're mentioning, I asked somebody from the TFF to go there. I couldn't go as I knew I would be in the US, and I asked our general secretary to go. And he was like, really? I said, yeah, go there. He said, why? I said, minimum to listen. I think we should always give people the benefit of the doubt. Somebody says, I'll step down from my pedestal for the first time and I will come and talk. Go there and listen. Maybe it's a sincere talk and maybe it's not. I don't want to issue a prejudgment. And I have to say that our general secretary was so surprised of my request that he went to ask other people, but Rafaela is suggesting that I go, what do you think? But what am I going to do there? I said, nothing. But just maybe ask a question or not, no? But the question is, why are they doing this? Of course, I'm not in their heads. The thing is, when somebody attacks you, you have a tendency to attack back. And then distance becomes bigger and bigger and bigger because, of course, then you're defensive and you counterattack. And this can go on forever. And this snowballs. The normal mindset that I should have towards the step that is being taken is that this is just a game. This is just a strategy because now courts are against me. So let me say, oh, whoops, let me suspend it and review it. You know that a song from Britney Spears, whoops, I did it again. Like I knew everything I was doing. Oh, whoops, So that would be the normal mindset. Like, oh, nice. Now you suspend it. No, we've been telling you for 2 years this is illegal. Everybody's telling you. Every normal lawyer that could read that would say, what the hell? You issued it anyhow. We go to court. If you read the lines of defense, they are not legal at all. They're total emotional arguments of how you think agents are. Take the Brazilian case, and the defense that was presented there was like, what does that have to do with the law? That's your perception of a profession, yeah? And now you decide to suspend it and have a conversation. So an emotional mindset would be, I don't even listen to you. Come on. Like, you think I'm stupid? That's the emotional reaction. But I think, as I said, we represent something. This is the TFF. This is a serious association. If we want to be serious, we need to say, it is important to have a dialogue. Are you ready to have a dialogue? I am open to it. And I will always be open to it without a previous, let's say, conception of what has been done before. Because when you want to reach a deal with somebody, if you bring to the table your history, your traumas, your past, you never reach a deal. So the thing is, how do I read this? As Rafaela, you understood my feelings. If I have to say STFF, we're always open to dialogue, and we have to turn the page and say, okay, page turned. Can we do something decent now? Can we sit and talk? And can we solve it and move on? Because football is not about us. Football is not about the agents. And there's so much we can do together, because you as regulator have a view that I don't, because you see things that I don't. But me as an agent, I have a view that you don't. I see things that you don't, because we are seeing things from different angles. If you're in front of a window and I am behind the window, I will see a different picture of it. And maybe if we put this picture together, it's a bigger picture. And that's the mindset. And then we can address what matters. Pedophilia, corruption, semi-slavery. Are players an asset? Is the transfer system valid? Does it still make sense today? Should we not discuss things that are so much more important than the agent? I mean, too much of a spotlight for us, no? Doesn't matter. We're just there to make it happen. The stage doesn't belong to us. The stage belongs to the players. Let's talk about them. Let's do something that matters.
Yes, even the agents industry is very different. Everyone's saying we're waiting for the European Court of Justice final decision, but that's only for European agents. You're in Brazil, I'm in Australia, even Jonathan is in England. That decision may not affect the agents regulation in those countries that I've mentioned, because we're outside the European space in some way. So yeah, it's very interesting observations.
Yeah, Rafaela, to just close off, I know we've spoken about a lot of things, and it's obviously very clear your vision and your passion for the industry. But if you had one wish for the football agents industry moving forward, either as yourself or as TFF, what would it be?
A wish.
Yeah.
Let me think, yes.
Only the one, though. You're not having more than one wish.
One wish for the industry,
Yes.
for individual agencies, for the industry.
Tell you what, then, you can have two wishes. Go on. That's the negotiation, isn't it?
Always. I always say I'm always negotiating. Somebody told me the other day that it was on a table, and the people on the other side, they said, are you already negotiating? And somebody that was on the other side, she's negotiating from the moment she said hi, you know. And I think if I would wish for agents, because I see how many young people aspire to enter this industry today. I receive a lot of messages and I hear people talking and I see the interest. So what I wish for them is that they understand that this is not about money. Money comes, but if you do this because you think this is a quick way to get rich, to travel the world, you're doing this for the wrong reasons. And then I wish you don't come. But if you come for the right reasons, that is, I can be of impact to do something that is participating in the beauty that is being a part of football, and I can make a difference, then I wish for these agents that they really succeed. Now, for the agents in general, what I would wish really is that we reach a point where there is real peace for us to work, that there is proper dialogue between everybody, between all stakeholders, so that we can also, as agents, do something that matters. And I think at the end, all wishes come together. That is, that we can do a good job, because that's why we are here. And if you're not at least a bit of an idealist, I don't know if that's a word in English.
Yes.
You shouldn't do this job, because it involves too much passion and you need to have it.
Rafaela, perfect place to end. Thank you so much for your time, taking the time to join us today.
Thank you.
As we appreciate how busy you are, especially with the 19-hour days that you mentioned. And hopefully when things are a bit clearer with the agent regulations, you'll come back on the show and maybe we can talk more about your career as an agent and others can learn from your knowledge and experience further, because we could have gone on for a lot longer. I think that's safe to say. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Take care. Yes.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. A lot to take away from that interview, Peter. Someone at the forefront of some of the biggest deals in the football agency world, and also someone very much at the sharp end when it comes to battling against the less welcome aspects of FFAR, and thus looking out for the football agents industry and the rights of agents.
Jonathan, it was a great honour to host a super agent in Rafaela Pimenta. I would say someone who's passionate, visionary, understands the workings of the business at the top level. But interesting for me is that she's a lawyer, an agent, and also an academic and international law, amongst others. So I think Rafaela provides a unique perspective on the international agent business and how transfers are made. And interestingly, in her interview, she mentioned how she's part of the leadership team at the TFF. And it was very important for us to give her a chance to give thoughts on the FFAR and where she thinks agency in the future is heading. Also, I like the fact that she took the initiative, especially when TFF was being set up, to invite other powerful super agents to meet up. Interestingly, a lot of the super agents found this initial meeting as something they should have done a long time ago. That's the flavour I get, as they have a lot of things in common, and that the agent's voice has to be more united, and we are a key stakeholder. And I think those messages came through in Rafaela Pimenta's interview.
There were quite a few things to take away, and if I may, there's 3 or 4 things I just want to highlight and refer back to from our chat with Rafaela. The first is the money this FFAR dispute is wasting on litigation, not just by the agents, but also FIFA, and how that revenue and that money could be used for better projects. Not just agents' education from the agent side, that is, but FIFA must be spending far more, and not just against TFF and its allies, but also in other challenges with the likes of IFA, PROFA, and others. How much could that be better used? The second thing is, Rafaela spoke clearly on the matter of education for the agents world, and that is a drum you and I have been banging on for many, many years, and I've been doing it since my time with the AFA and Sofia. The simple fact is that what FIFA provide currently with CPD is simply not enough. And I think it is looking more like it's going to be the agents associations who are responsible for driving this forward. The next thing, the matter of young agents, or should we say new agents. With the new license, there are new people coming into the industry, and many more want to join them, which is nothing new compared to past regulations and past licensing. But as Rafaela said, in many such cases, this is and has been with the wrong motivations for many, such as money, glamour, and lifestyle that's perceived of being an agent. When a prospective agent asks me for tips or how they start out in the industry, I usually say to them, write down 10 reasons you want to be an agent. If you can't think of 10, think again. And if any of your top 3 to 5 are money or to get rich, simply forget it. And finally, another thing that stuck out for me, and something I didn't expect from the interview, was the aspect of giving people the benefit of the doubt and working together to get over this impasse of FFAR. Now, whilst we asked Rafaela the question about FIFA possibly softening their stance on FFAR, and I think we can forget FIFA for 1 minute, as the feedback I received from that meeting in Madrid is that the tone may be softening, but their stance definitely isn't, and it's still the same old arguments and poor justifications on the disputed elements of FFAR. But I actually noticed possible change in the stance and approach of TFF to when they first started several years ago. I'm not saying they've softened or changed their stance on their core views or principles, but the diplomacy circuit does seem to have been engaged. And from what Rafaela said in our interview, they seem to want to find solutions to regulation and the licensing impasse.
I agree that I got that sense of a solution-focused approach of Rafaela. And yes, I think that is the way to go with all stakeholders. Now, I'm going to mention a quote, and this is a quote actually from Jonathan Barnett. If I am starstruck, I cannot be in this business, as in the agent's business. And both Barnett and Rafaela Pimenta, they're dealing with star players. And if you're dealing with star players, you can never be starstruck because you need to make the deals and represent effectively. And I think having Rafaela on really reflected how she approaches the business in a very, very effective way. And also we mentioned about Jonathan Barnett retiring and what some of his legacy was in the business now. Again, some very interesting topics in this episode, including the two super agents that I just mentioned, one retiring and one giving the view from the top in agency on, amongst other things, the current regulations and what's happening in the agency business right now, but also some tidbits and advice for younger agents. Also, we covered the intriguing story of an agent who's looking at becoming a sport director, and the opposite, the polar opposite of some agents have had enough and moving the business. So very, very interesting topics. Now, it's very refreshing to see how a super agent like Pimenta wanted to present to our audience, which is an audience of agents and those interested in the agents industry. And that's a different type of audience. We know that Rafaela gets asked for a lot of interviews. So for us, it's a big privilege to be able to host her. Now, that's pretty much the show, everyone. Please like us on Spotify or any other platforms you may be listening. We're happy to receive any comments and feedbacks via our LinkedIn page. Please reach out if you've got any questions or you want anything clarified. And it's a bye from me from this, I would say, fantastic episode.
Yes, the next episode of The Agent's Angle is scheduled as usual for 2 weeks' time now. But if there are any urgent breaking developments in the football agency world, such as new agent regulations in Italy, or even the fixes to the FIFA agents platform that we understand a lot of people are experiencing, just stick with it, guys. Document it. I know it's difficult and there's a lot of people very frustrated with it. We will endeavour to bring updates to you in the meantime. So until then, take care, everyone, and bye for now.
The purpose of the Agent's Angle podcast is to provide news, information and facilitate discussion on regulatory matters, policies, business trends and issues affecting football agents worldwide. The opinions and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only and should never be considered legal or professional advice. Furthermore, the views expressed by guests are their own and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Thank you for listening.